person we were talking about there a moment ago. They're almost scary.
To bear.
Yeah, he said it.
Al,
Structure.
are you going to the?
Because I don't understand.
Nothing.
Oh, do they?
Oh, this is why I'm very, I'm apprehensive. And
Yeah.
I'm starting to work around the.
That's a nice thought though, but.
Yeah, but then the client will give advice to.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not
yeah,
here, but
that's good.
We're good to go.
that's pretty.
Good evening, everyone. We are ready to proceed in peace and friendship and in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. I acknowledge that the municipality of Colchester is in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'm prepared to entertain a motion. The agenda be accepted as presented. Moved by Councillor Martel, seconded by Councillor Patton. Discussion on the motion? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary-minded nay. Motion is carried. The agenda is approved as presented. The next item is the approval of the minutes from the meeting held on May 27, 2025. I'm prepared to entertain a motion with regards to those minutes. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Sanderson, and it's be accepted as presented, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Discussion on the motion? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary-minded nay. The motion is carried. The minutes of May 27, 2025 have been approved as presented. Business arising from those minutes. Hearing none, we shall move on to our standing committee reports and recommendations. Deputy Mayor Sanderson, please, for council committee.
Thank you, Mayor. The report and recommendation of council committee meeting held on June the 12th, 2025. Community event grant request, Northumberland Arts Council. I move that council approves $2,640 for the Northumberland Arts Council's Mini Makers Market and Itty Bitty Buskers Fest, with source of funds being the community events grant.
And do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Weatherby. Discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded nay. The motion is carried. Deputy Mayor, please.
Community event grant request, Bible Hill Garden Club. The council approves $1,000 for the Bible Hill Garden Club's provincial exhibition flower show, with source of funds being community event grants. I so move.
And do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patton. Discussion on the motion? The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary-minded nay. The motion is carried. Deputy Mayor.
MacElmon Road servicing. I move that council approves that the extension of services on MacElmon Road to service 3 proposed new lots be referred to the capital budget process with scope of work as described under option 1 of the June 12th, 2025 action item.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Benoit. Discussion on the motion? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary-minded nay. The motion is carried. Deputy Mayor.
Property matter, acquisition of Chignecto Central Regional Center for Education land. I move that council proceed with the acquisition of the portion of PID 204-55531 in Tatamagouche from the Chignecto Central Regional Center for Education for use as parkland for the village of Tatamagouche.
Seconded by Councillor Martel. Discussion on the motion?
Question?
The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary-minded nay. Motion is carried. Deputy Mayor.
Negotiations, marketing levy administration services agreement. I move that council approve the marketing levy administration services agreement as presented in closed session and direct the mayor and CAO to execute the agreement.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patton. Discussion on the motion?
Question.
The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. Deputy Mayor. The next item is the French River, Tatamagouche, that is, Source Water Protection Advisory Committee minutes of the meeting held on May 22, 2025. I'm prepared to entertain a motion, those minutes be accepted for information, moved by Councillor Martel. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Cooper. Any discussion on that motion? Does anyone have any questions with regards to those minutes?
I just have one question.
Yes, Councillor Kennedy, your microphone, please.
The forestry management plan, which was prepared last year for the municipal owned lands. What is that plan?
I'm going to ask our Director of Public Works to address that, please. Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do see that Paul is here and his team managed that project, so if it's okay, I'll defer to Paul.
Yes, Paul, please. Our Director of Community Development, Paul.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and to Councillor Kennedy through the mayor. About a year and a half ago, we engaged or issued an RFP to do a forest management plan for all of our municipal lands, which are really quite extensive across the county. And they would include all of our parks and several of which had suffered a lot of damage from the hurricane. So it was really an exercise to make us or enable us to be less vulnerable to more severe weather and preserving sort of the integrity of the forest within those parks, so that it's just more sustainable. So that plan was adopted by council last spring, and our recreation department, through particularly in Nelson Memorial Park and Burnside Park, have been using it as a guide to sort of manage the undergrowth, replanting, etc. And we've also used it in Debert on some of the property we've owned in Debert. Yes. But that's in Debert. It's just sort of in the early stages.
Thank you.
But
Councillor Kennedy?
no, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a motion on the floor, Councillor. Is there any further discussion? And are you ready for the question? The question's been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The minutes are accepted for information. The next item on the agenda is the report and recommendation from the Nominating Committee on the meeting held of June 17, 2025. The following recommendation was made by the committee, and this would be considered a motion, but I will read it. That council appoints Robert Monk to serve as citizen representative on the Flood Advisory Committee, and that council appoints Chris Verge to serve as citizen representative on the Debert Source Water Protection Advisory Committee. And I need a motion on that, please. Moved by Councillor Patton, seconded by Councillor Cooper, that this recommendation be approved. Any discussion? And Deputy Mayor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on Robert Monk, was he not on the Flood Advisory Committee? And did he take a leave of absence?
Yes, Robert was on the committee for quite a number of years, and he had a health issue that held him back for a bit, and now he's well again and ready to get back on the committee and anxious to get back on the committee.
Lots of
So we're
experience.
delighted. He has lots of experience. Yes. Any further questions? And are you ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The next item is the Flood Advisory Committee minutes from the meeting of June 17, 2025. And I'm prepared to entertain a motion. These be accepted for information. Moved by Councillor Patton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. that the minutes be accepted for information. You will see a list in the minutes of the projects that we're working on right now, and there could be more. We don't know when they will come in, but it depends on the, any discussion on the motion? The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. Moving into our action items. The first action item is the feeding wild animals bylaw, the first reading. And Devin is here, and I shall ask Devin if he would address this, please. You do have a revised copy on table.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. As you know, this bylaw, I guess it refers to wild animals, but one of the key thing that stemmed this was our urban deer population. That's been a bit of a challenge, and we've been trying to address with our partners at Department of Natural Resources. It was suggested by them that as part of our toolkit in trying to deal with that, that we introduce a bylaw, at least to have on hand, to address the issue of those who may be feeding the deer and I guess contributing to the problem. So that's kind of where this why this bylaw is before you as a draft this evening for your consideration for first reading. I'll just jump right to kind of the 3.0, just to kind of, I'll quickly read through that just so that you have an idea of the wording, I guess, the real key of the bylaw. So it basically says no person shall deliberately feed or one or more wild animal in any place in such a manner or to such an extent that doing so causes or may cause an unreasonable interference with another person's use and enjoyment of their property or of a public place, or that poses a danger or risk to a person, another person's property, or a public place within the municipality. So really the key there is to acknowledge that the deliberate feeding for one, and also the note about unreasonable interference with another person's use or enjoyment, and also something that's causing a danger. So someone who's maybe in the county feeding birds in the winter or something of that nature isn't exactly what's causing a danger or interfering with someone's property. So just wanted to point that out if that was of any concern. So really the focus is to address issues where we're causing a danger or a disturbance to neighbors by that kind of activity. So again, this is first reading. Have an opportunity to kind of I will point to the two minor adjustments that you'll see in the revised version, just a correction to governor in general is intended to be governor in council, and also just a minor change in the 3.0, the his or her to their, just more inclusive language was intended there. And yeah, I guess if you have any questions, you can pose them to myself or our solicitor.
Thank you. I'm prepared to entertain a motion with regards to the first reading. If someone is prepared to put a motion on the floor,
I move that we adopt option 3, that we don't adopt feeding wild animals. Wow.
do I have a seconder?
Second or else.
Second.
It's moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Kennedy, that option 3 be considered. Option 3. There is no option 3 right at the top. Yes, right at the top of the page. And all right, Councillor Cooper, you want to address your motion?
Yeah, I could, if I go to you to Devin.
You may.
My question would be, under interpretation and enforcement, the example you use is one that I was even gonna bring up. Feeding of birds, a lot of people really hate that. You know, especially with wild, bird liver thing that's happening and things like that, they're really people really hate the people feed birds and stuff like that. So interpreting what's good for me, not good for you is, I think, gonna be a nightmare, this bylaw. And enforcing it beyond that, I think is just, you know, DOT to bring this up and refer to here, I think it's, I don't think that's gonna be any part of this. I think the only thing we could have that's gonna make it a dent is if we do proper culling, so I think myself, so. This is my personal thing, I really don't see this is gonna accomplish anything, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Further discussion? Counselor Benoit.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. I just wanted to say that I am kind of glad to see this. Not so much about the deer. I don't get many complaints about people feeding the deer out in our country area anyway. But I do get a lot of complaints over the years about people feeding raccoons. And the raccoons are causing disturbances in the neighboring yards and causes some rats to come as well. And so I've been dealing with that by quite a few people over the years. And JP's actually helped me, and I was working with natural resources on a couple of people that were that regularly fed their raccoons. And I have raccoons in my yard. They're here every year. So but anyway, I'm okay to see this. I'm not sure if it's actually gonna fix the problem. Maybe the culling is the best solution, but I think it's just another tool that we can have in our pocket, more or less, to try to help those that are constantly dealing with the issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Leggett,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
leave your
Sure.
microphone.
Oh, sorry. So, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair, to Devon. How is this going to be enforced? And the only reason I say this is because the mayor has been tortured for the last 3 weeks to a month with a resident on Pictou Road about something that's clearly a bylaw infraction and nothing seems to be able to be done about it. So I'm kind of a bit perplexed about this. I mean, we're picking on birds and wildlife, like my yard is totally fenced and I feed the birds on a regular basis. Deer sleep in my front yard and pour tires for the neighbors and probably chew off hundreds of dollars worth of fancy flowers that people put in their yard unintentionally to feed the deer, but they do. So I totally agree that the cull is the answer, but I don't see how this is going to be enforced because this doesn't happen during 8:30 to 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, Devon?
Certainly, enforcement would be an issue. No question. I think it's similar to several bylaws that we probably have in place that enforcement becomes a challenge, particularly I know neighborhood nuisance is could talk to community development or our director there with regard to some of the enforcement related to that. So that is part of a broader consideration. I bring the bylaw forward mainly just as it was suggested or recommended from the Department of Natural Resources that we have it as a tool. And then if it were something that we needed to work at and see better, that would be something we'd have to consider getting additional resources perhaps.
Thank you, Devon. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at this and this isn't about the raccoons and the birds and the bears and, you know, and the green bins and they're gonna get into those anyway. This is about the deer. Why don't we just address it and call it a deer policy? Feeding the deer policy. If that's what we want to go and get after. Because that's really what we're talking about. And I'm looking at, you know, Councilor Cooper, John, the land out there, but the urban area is where the problem is with the deer. It's not in Nominating, it's not in Deferred, it's not in Nominating. You know, it's not in Greenfield, it's not in Herman, it's in Wild Hill Valley, Salmon River. That's the problem. So any complaints that you're getting around the table, I can guarantee you where they're coming from. They're coming from. Well, 2 councilors set that on the table, getting them. I'm getting them. Valley's getting them. You as mayor is getting them, and that's pretty much it.
And Hilden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Sheldon, we're going to. So that's the issue, and I think when DNR addressed this thing, they're not talking about being there, they're specifically talking about deer. So we want something in here to protect us against feeding the deer, something in the toolbox, let's talk about that. But Yeah, we can't restrict animals, period, out there. I just don't see how we're gonna do it. One tries to force that, good luck. And deer, that's a whole separate issue and I'll back that. As far as the way it's written right now, I'm not gonna support this unless we go and actually address it to the problem. The problem is the deer. So,
Councillor Martell.
Through the chair, yeah, I guess to Devon, doesn't the province already have legislation in place that prohibits people from feeding wild animals? So aren't we duplicating what the province isn't choosing to police and offloading onto us?
That very well could be the case. But so the conversation with that I had with Department of Natural Resources, it was in the conversation when we were discussing the option of eventually progressing to a managed bow hunt to help control the deer population. It was suggested that on that, one of the steps towards working towards that step would be to make sure that we've added all the other steps beforehand. So doing things like the education to our community members, doing the research, and having a bylaw that would at least address instances where someone was already contributing to the problem. So I think that I just wanted to clarify that was kind of the intent. Was this was a step working towards a managed hunt as a kind of a final option. So I just want to add that, just if we were to say no to this, I don't know how it may affect decisions from Department of Natural Resources down the road. That's all. I don't know that it would or wouldn't, but I'm just that's how it was presented, was that this would be a step or something to have in our toolkit to be able to address some of the issues around why we have the increased population. But the province may have other laws in place. I'm not that familiar with it, but it was suggested by one of the DNR staff members that I was dealing with that this may be a useful thing to have in place before we move towards the managed hunt.
Thank you, Devon. Councillor Weatherby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My thought is that we definitely have a problem with deer. And I would be very willing to support. I understand what Devon's saying and trying to do, understand where he's coming from. I'd be very willing to support option 2. If he came back with a more clearly written and defined statement. And if we go for the deer, call a spade. And the other thing being is we definitely need to have some idea how it's going to be enforced, because rules without enforcement, you're just wasting your time. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any further conversation? This does not mean that there may not be a cull. That's something that we need to be clear on. This is talking about feeding at this point, wild animals. We do have a motion on the floor. And if there is no further conversation on this motion, it is that council not adopt the feeding of wild animals bylaw. Any further discussion on that motion?
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay.
Nay.
Nay. Would the ayes please raise their hands? Councillor Cooper, Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Patton, Councillor Martell. I'm prepared to entertain a motion with regards to this bylaw. Councillor Benoit.
Sorry. I will make a motion that council approves by way of first reading, chapter 60, feeding of wild animals bylaw.
Thank you. Seconder. Seconded by Councillor Richardson. And discussion on the motion. Did Councillor Johnson, were you thinking of an amendment to the name?
and but we have to wait for the other option. Do we not? So I'm gonna vote against this one and bring up the next option, with the next recommendation after I get a crack at it.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Further discussion. Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Contraminded nay. Councillor Benmont was aye.
Okay.
And then I'm prepared to entertain a motion with regards to this bylaw. Councillor Johnson,
Thank you, Mayor. I can, that I'll, put off to two. And I'd like to, make a further amendment that we address it strictly to deer.
so then the motion would be our solicitor Dennis, please.
Mayor, through to the councillor, I think it might be a better idea to refer back to staff for some suggestions on that if you wanted to narrow it. I just was doing a quick look under the Wildlife Act, which is referred to, and the act does authorize regulations to deal with feeding of wild animals, but I can't find them that they've actually implemented any regulations from the province. But I think Devin gathered this from a couple of other jurisdictions who had similar language. So if I'm gonna narrow to deer, I'd rather come back after some consideration, if it's acceptable to council.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, are you prepared to change your motion?
And I'd like to send it back to staff to address feeding the deer. And back to council next week.
For amendments to what is currently before us, okay? Seconded by Councillor Richardson. Discussion on the motion,
Mayor Blair?
Deputy Mayor,
Thank you. I'd just like to have staff consider enforcement as well. They're considering changes.
thank you. And do you want that as part of the motion? Dennis, should that be part of the motion or
I think that's more CEO's call, but
CAO?
Thank you through the mayor to deputy mayor. So what I've heard here tonight is a more comprehensive review of what the province is doing, looking at enforcement and zeroing in on one particular wild animal versus small wild animals.
They're not very wild and heavy. Like, just
Since I've seen them cross at the crosswalk, I know.
That's right. They wait at the crosswalk. Okay, we have a motion before us. Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously.
We'll get target spot.
Thank you, Devin. Council, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Balefill excavator replacement. And I shall ask our Director of Solid Waste, Phil, please, to address this.
Thank you, Mayor Blair, and good evening, council. The action item that you have in front of you is the purpose of the action item is to receive approval for the capital purchase to replace an excavator that was destroyed by a recent fire at the Balefill operation in Kemptown. A bit of background here, but on May the 27th, 2025, the excavator in question at the Balefill operation in Kemptown caught fire while staff were on the morning break. Interesting about that, the operator had used it in the morning, did their morning checks, and at 10 o'clock went for his break, and at 10:10 the unit was noticed by another staff member of some smoke coming out of the unit. Efforts by staff to extinguish the fire could not stop it, and the machine was eventually destroyed. The Valley Kemptown Fire Department, very quick to respond, I might add, was called by 911, and the fire was extinguished. A fair bit of environmental cleanup was required using absorbent material, and then eventually we had to remove 183 tons of contaminated soil. The excavator was a 2008 Caterpillar 320D model with just a little over 11,000 machine hours. And this excavator is used to dig what's called borrow pit material. Soil is taken for daily cover at both the landfill and the construction and demolition disposal sites. A bit of an analysis, when this action item was written, the excavator insurance policy provided replacement coverage of the deductible based on the appraised value for the machine of this vintage. And at that time, preliminary estimates, but I can now confirm that these are estimates that they've provided were real values. The insurance net proceeds towards the new machine will be just a little over $73,000. And that is after a $25,000 deductible from the insurance. So almost $100,000 worth of residual value in that machine. So procurement of this replacement machine was being completed by what's called the Canoe program as part of our municipality's procurement policy. And if you remember, we added this particular option in a recent update to our procurement policy. So several options are available via the Canoe program. Staff looked at the options through the program that were available to us. And the unit matching the needs of quality, service, and price, that three-pronged approach, is the 2025 Caterpillar 320 GC model. Delivered price of $312,630 Canadian and a 3-week delivery. And I note that 3-week delivery because we do have a rental excavator currently on site costing us $7,950 a month that started in early June. So in the current fiscal 5-year capital plan, there is $350,000 budgeted for the replacement of the excavator in the fiscal year 26-27. And so approximately 240,000 of that budgeted 350 would need to be accelerated 1 year forward in order to facilitate this purchase. So a couple of options available for council. Council could approve the accelerated expenditure of the approved capital budget resources for the purchase of the replacement excavator. Or council could request staff to continue to look at alternative options, noting that we're currently spending $7,950 a month on rental. So some of the resource implications, approximately $240,000 of approved capital budget resources would need to be accelerated forward 1 year to purchase the new excavator. And the funds would be supplied from both the Balefill Equipment Reserve as well as the Balefill Capital Reserve. A Director of Corporate Services was involved in helping facilitate this procurement effort. And excavator, as noted, is needed for day-to-day use. And the staff recommendation is that council would approve the 1 year accelerated expenditure of the approved capital budget resources for the purpose of the replacement excavator. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Phil. I'm prepared to entertain a motion. Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move that council approves the accelerated expenditure of the capital resources from the approved 5-year capital budget in the amount of $240,000 for the purchase of the replacement excavator as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fletcher. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Cooper?
Yes, to Phil, if I could, please.
Yes.
So Phil, I guess I'm still old school. Canoe process. I know I've used that in the past and like it. But anyway, so there's lots of opportunity for people around here to supply these items. So does this canoe process do local first and go other places, or how does that work?
Good question, and through you, to the chair, to you, Councillor Cooper. The Canoe program is a procurement agency that provides municipalities like ours a vetting of manufacturers' equipment in this case. So they would evaluate manufacturers who wish to post their equipment available for municipalities to look at on their platform. So they're going to provide municipalities with a vetted piece of equipment that meets the service and the quality and the pricing factor that provide a level playing field. And so they'll put a base model unit on their website that fulfills all of the vetting criteria and gives the municipalities an opportunity to look at those pieces of equipment that meet those 3 prongs that I mentioned: service, quality, and price. And if there are items in there besides price that ensure that the machines are properly vetted for their overall effective and high quality use, then those are the machines that we have access to through Canoe. So there could be some machines that don't meet those vetted criteria, some local machines, some machines that might not be in our area. But being vetted first provides organizations like ours to ensure that we're looking at machines that meet the criteria of those 3 items being, I said, service, quality, and price.
I guess I'm thinking more along the lines of supporting local. So that's one of the reasons I don't So, yeah, we have, I guess if I go through you to the CIO.
Yes,
So underneath procurement, we have an option to pick something that's not exactly the cheapest. There's a 2% or 3% or something, isn't there?
Hmm.
So underneath this program, we don't get to see that, so we can see what pricing anything is even. So be able to bring that up.
CAO, please.
Thank you. So through the chair to counselor. So you're right. Effectively, what you're doing is saying, there's a spec and they go through and say, here's the options that are available that meet that spec. On items that are not capital in nature, that are typically like supplies. So for example, our Balefill would go through, canoe for tires on vehicles, and those typically will be filtered nationally through a local, company to supply because of the volume. When you're talking a one of, typically heavy machinery or special equipment. I know, in another jurisdiction, one time we needed a large compressor and they went out to the market and found one and brought it in, and it was installed by a local technician, but came from another source. Typically the savings on this are generally in the 30% range. That's generally what you'll see in the 20 to 30% range of savings versus going through a bid process.
Really?
Anything further, counselor?
Late, but anyway, thank you.
I suspect the CAO is aware. Counselor Richardson.
Simple through you to Phil. Will this one have a fire suppression system on
Phil, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair. The other unit did have a fire suppression system on it. It was activated, but it did not stop the fire. And all our machines do have fire suppression systems installed.
it? Phil, is it a
Yes.
liquid system or is it a powder system?
That I'd have to check, but confident that we use powder for most of our machines.
That's
Anything?
Liquid is preferred because it cools it off. Just a thought for the future. Have liquid and powder installed. Works better.
Thank you, well noted.
We burn a machine a month, but 2 days later we put them back to work. So.
Thank you, counselor. Appreciate that. Any further discussion? Counselor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through to Phil. I'm not entirely enthused with this canoe program in the slightest. Like, it should be, hey, we should have at least 3 prices for options. And I know there's an unsolicited proposal put to yourself from a local supplier, of which we have 4 in the neighborhood, at a significantly lower price than what come out here tonight. We should be supporting local, especially when we have 4 local dealers in the neighborhood. That can also provide service. Been around heavy machinery most of my life, and pretty much most excavators go do the same thing. They go up and down, round and around, backwards and forwards, without too much grief. But I think we should be supporting the local. I think this canoe bid comes from a place in Ontario. Correct? But we should be looking at our local suppliers. They're the ones that are gonna have to service it. It won't be the dealer in Ontario. So I think it needs to be revisited. If you do the math on the run roughly 13 hours a week over the 17-year lifespan that it's been in service. So it's not totally maxed out. It's unfortunate that there was a loss. I'm not sure if the price of the canoe includes fire protection system that Sheldon referenced. But if there's a saving, as to what I understand, I saw in an email from a local supplier this afternoon, it was presented to yourself, and that's significant. Thank you.
Thank you, counselor. Counselor Fleming.
Through the chair to Phil. If it goes through the canoe program, there's a cat dealership just in Dartmouth or Burnside or whatever. It'd probably come out of there anyway, would it not? It would, you think?
Through you to through the chair to you, yes, it would come from the Nova Scotia dealership in Dartmouth.
And I'll just, a little information, a little bit. I know it's Caterpillar. I've quite a bit of machinery as well. And one of our machines, which was not a Caterpillar, was down for a year. And sent back to the dealer 3 times to be repaired. So Caterpillar, I think you have great service. They are expensive, but they certainly stand behind their product. And I think compared to another local one that was sent, it was unbelievable. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Counselor. Further discussion? Counselor Johnson?
Thank you, Mary. I haven't talked to anybody around this other than CEO, nobody else around the table. So, a couple questions and I'll direct them through Chair, maybe to Phil.
Yes.
So, Canoe, I don't know much about Canoe, but I spoke to them a couple of years ago down at White Point Beach Lodge.
Mm.
He seemed like a headhunter to me, similar to what I know as a headhunter. Do they take a percentage of this for finding it, and, you know, how do they work and how do they make money on this? Is the commission fund back to them? Do we just pay a yearly event and belong to them?
Thanks for your question, and I have to direct that to our Director of Corporate Services. He was sort of integral in starting that program and communicating with Canoe on this particular project.
Thank you, and I'll ask our Director of Corporate Services, Scott, to address this, please.
Your worship. Yeah, the Canoe program is a buying group, and if I remember correctly, they probably do get a commission now. Either that's through purchases or that's through membership organizations that belong, like vendors. I don't have the exact mechanism for how they generate the revenue. I can tell you that in terms of working as a buyer group, they're working for government, and when they do that, and they go out and get suppliers, it's not just necessarily suppliers from away, because that's been made a comment here a few times. Most of the people who I talked to on this file were in Truro. A lot of them were out close to the highway. So when I talked to those folks, I said, "You're in the Canoe program?" "Yeah," and they were able to give me their Canoe number, because they all have numbers that show that they're a member of Canoe. Some of them work through the brand. So if you're a dealer for CAT, you could be a dealer just down the road from us, and if you're selling CAT and CAT's in the Canoe, then your dealership's in the Canoe. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that there is local representation in the program. I did speak to quite a few of them. In terms of the equipment itself, I think all equipment equal. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. Being in the municipal world for a few years now, I've seen brands that hold up well under pressure and some don't. I would concur that CAT's a good brand. In terms of the program, I think the intent of a buying group is to provide savings. So if this doesn't provide us savings, it's not going to provide our neighbors across the country savings. It's not going to work. So I think so far, what I'm hearing from colleagues in Nova Scotia and across the country is that they do see a savings when they go through the buying group, just because it's a case where it's economies of scale. If you're gonna sell units to municipal governments and you're gonna get on the Canoe list and sell more units, you're gonna sharpen your pencil. There is another group as well. We used, I think it's called Kinetic. That one hasn't been as popular, but it's another one that we have available to us, and in certain situations, I can see it working for us as a way to save some money.
Thank you, Scott. Anything further, Counselor?
Yes, so I'm listening to Bill. So quality is one. So quality. I've been around excavators for 35 years too. For all the over every other week. There's lots of different brands from Komatsu, John Deere, to Volvo, You can name all the Chinese ones out there too, but at the end of the day, most of them are made across the pond and assembled somewhere in North America, so they're North American, made, even though they're not. So number one, quality. Well, I don't find it being transparent sitting here knowing what Canoe did, because we don't see what they did or what they brought back to the table. So we're talking about price, but really we don't know about price because we haven't seen what they looked at. So quality is one, and I base quality on warranty, right? It's available for warranty, and no manufacturers are all very, very similar. Let's talk about service. Well, service is only as good as your service department and how local it is. So I've got a couple people here sitting around the table, they live on service. I know a little bit about service too. Service is only as good as your dealer that provides a guy in a truck that's gonna show up and fix it on the day that you need it. We need it, we're down. So service, local service, I think we got more pull with local service than we do with service out of HRM. The other thing I too look at locally is that these are businesses that are supporting tax dollars in this neighborhood, plus as well as employment. And the last thing that Phil brought up was price. So if we're looking at quality, service, price, I don't have a problem with quality on probably 10 excavators are being sold out there. I don't have a problem with some of the local service, depending on who it is. And if price is a factor, which we're spending taxpayers' dollars here, I look at price that may be a deciding factor more than the other two, even if the other two are similar. I've also seen the other quote, very similar product, actually 3 ton heavier, a little bigger engine on it, but it's substantial, 30% less money. So 30% of 300,000, it's a little over $90,000. Most people around the table don't know that. So would you consider something slopeful that's 30% less? I'm not cheap at all, trust me, but I'm all about value for a dollar. So, I know that the guy that wrote me knows, he's seen it also, so did I, sent it to me. I don't know who spoke to who, but I understand and sent it to somebody at staff. I don't know where it went to. But, I just think that we probably should visit that before we make a decision here tonight and put it to bed, one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. We do have a motion on the floor. Any comments? Dan? CAO, please.
Through the chair to council. So, I certainly appreciate that, there's a conversation kind of happening here that is, a local supplier supplied information to some people and didn't to others. And again, I think, that's a very tricky conversation for councils to be making decisions on. Part of the process, and as described by Phil, is that going through a buying group, such that Canoe is that there's a series of standards, and if you meet those standards, you're in, and if you don't meet them, you're not. And so I believe that what we're talking about here is somebody who was not part of that buying group. That said, if council's decision is that they want us to go and go a different route than going through the buying group, we can certainly do that. But I can also say that, similar to some of the comments, there is a quality gap that exists, and I can't speak to if there is a situation here, but I certainly have been in situations where large pieces of equipment have been bought that do not stand up over time. And it's not about warranty and it's not about service, it's just there's some flaws or wear and tear just doesn't hold up. That said, I guess the question before council tonight is, we have a Caterpillar product that's in front of us at a price. If council would wish for us to move on that, we'll move on it. If council says no, then we will go a more traditional route and go get quotes. So it really will be whatever council wishes to have come from tonight's session.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was told by the salesman that they are a member of Canoe. Why, where they are, they're not. He said they deal with Canoe. I don't write it down. But I'm probably not going to support it because I'd like to see us revisit it. It's about supply and demand and all the local stuff. I just want to see this being transparent from the research and what we know around the table when we get, I got a counselor to the left and right of it, there's no more about excavators than everybody in this building put together. So, that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Honestly, through the chair, I don't think it should, if they're not sharing it with the whole council members, I don't even think it should be considered, to be honest. Why give another councillor information that somebody else doesn't have? Like, we don't even know, you know what the product is, but a lot of us here don't. And this, if they want to sharpen their pencil, if they're part of the canoe thing, they would have sharpened their pencil enough to get in it, in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just for open conversation, that canoe only came up with one viable product when there's X number of products on the market. Like there's no, like, if most of us go shopping for a vehicle, unless we're a diehard Ford, Dodge or GM person, we're looking at multiple vehicles. You know, if we're a cat family, fine, but I know the county has multiple different brands of machinery laying around the countryside too. So I would think the due diligence is to have at least 3 prices. I don't care who it is. And I mean, and for canoe to identify only one. I don't think that's a great business model, but that's not, I don't look at canoe, so. But I think we should have at least 3 prices and some options as to what's what. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Weatherby.
Through the chair to Phil, if I could, please. Phil, were there other options that you discussed with canoe and that you had to choose from?
Thank you, and through the chair, yes, Canoe provided us the 3 options, the 2 which were local. And when we looked at all of the, I'll say, options and the additional opportunity that came through by one of the vendors to provide additional support financially, adding all those 3 equations together was the Caterpillar brand versus the other 2 local brands that were eligible under the Canoe program. And I just do want to state that the Director of Corporate Services did check with the Canoe people to find out if the company that I believe Councillor Johnson is referring to, they were not in the Canoe program. They didn't meet the vetted criteria to be a member of the Canoe program and to be able to supply an offer. So remember that the Canoe looks at service, quality, and price in order to be able to consider the vendor to be part of the Canoe program. So,
thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Chair. I was confused up until Phil just spoke. My main concern is holding this purchase up any longer because it is a needed piece of equipment. But I fully agree with Councillor Johnson and Leggett that we need to be more transparent in this and we need to be sure that we're buying local at all times. So if that's something that can be incorporated into our contract or whatever we hold with Canoe. However, having said that, if this business that you're referring to, and I didn't see any of this information, if they're not a part of the Canoe program, then I guess that solves that problem. But for me, it's holding this up, and I don't want to see that happen. So for tonight, I'd love to see this purchase go through and get this established.
Councillor Johnson, this is your 3rd time to speak. Is that right?
So I didn't say the name, I didn't say who, but I will say that some of this product has been sold to the town of Truro and also to the neighboring county that also use it in a landfill site. So it's not as if it's a new product just showing up off a barge that get transported out here. So that's the only thing I'll say is that it does have some history. Some municipalities, some towns around the province, they were sitting and talking about the exact same thing we're talking about here tonight. And they made a decision, probably based on the big gap.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Martel.
I feel like we're kind of having half a conversation because there's missing information that some of us know and others don't, which is really unfair to have a conversation like that around the table. As a new councillor, at some point in the past, a decision was made to use Canoe and that someone would have had to authorize the use of that and why we are using that today. I think council needs some education on why we are using that, how it does benefit us, and what the outcomes are. We have to trust that the staff are using the tools that they have been asked by council to use to bring things like this to us. I fully support supporting local, but I also have to trust the process that is in front of us. And if we don't understand that process, then I would ask staff to help us understand why it is this way and how it's being used, so that when we come to the table like this, that we're not having half discussions about information that some of us have and some of us do not.
Thank you, Counselor, and I believe the questions have been answered very fairly and upfront by our staff. We do have a motion. Counselor Cooper,
Yes, it's a question for you to-
quickly, yes.
Just kind of what
Counselor Cooper, through to Phil, please.
So when this latest proposal was given to you, has that even been considered at all because it's not part of canoe?
Good question, and through you to the chair.
Yes.
By going through the canoe program, the information that was supplied to us, me, to our group, was not part of the package that we were reviewing for canoe, as the fact that we were looking through canoe as being the organization to help support this purchase.
So, yeah, so is it relevant that they were cheaper or anything else that wasn't even considered?
As mentioned earlier, thanks for the question, through you to the chair. When we look at our purchases, the goal is to look at both service, quality, and price, and not specifically focus on one attribute of that sort of three-pronged approach.
Thank you, Phil, and our CAO, please.
Thank you. So through the chair to Counselor. Also recognizing that, and we have a series of quotes that were reviewed. Any process we would go in, if a quote was received late or after that process was evaluated, it wouldn't be considered. So ignoring any conversation around those other pieces, we had, as you heard the director, a series of machinery was forwarded to him through the canoe procurement process. He looked at them, he had options, and it's the recommendation that's here. And so the supplier that I think individuals are talking about here is not part of that canoe process, so it was not considered at that time.
Counselors, any further discussion? You have a motion before you. And the question has been, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. And the nays are Counselor Cooper, Counselor Johnson, Counselor Leggett. The motion is carried. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Phil. It's a lot. Shame. The next item on the agenda is the front entrance, the redesign, and the request that this be forwarded to August committee to approve. I'm going to ask our Director of Public Works, Michelle, to address this, please. David, you're going to be the person that will be addressing it. Okay, our engineer, David Quinn. David, please.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. Good evening, council. For those of you who aren't overly familiar with me, David Quinn, I'm a project engineer downstairs of the Public Works office. So I'll be handling the next few items here, fairly straightforward for a couple of them. So as Mayor Blair mentioned, this is the front entrance redesign, just authority for August council committee to approve should a tender come in over budget. So just to go through a bit of background here, council's approved capital budget included $70,000 in fiscal 2024-2025 for the design of the front entryway accessibility improvements here at the courthouse building at 1 Church Street. So that design project was fully funded by the Federal Enabling Accessibility Fund and focused on the exterior of the entrance along with the immediate entrance vestibule. And in addition to this, council's approved capital budget includes $250,000 in this current fiscal year for the construction of that design, which does include a ramp for the front of the building. So this project's being prompted by a couple of reasons. First is the need to make the front entrance fully accessible to meet provincial mandates, as well as provide an acceptable level of service to our residents here in Colchester. And second, to improve security and control the flow of traffic through the front of the building. So we need to have people coming through the front of the building, basically, as opposed to some coming through the front, some coming through the back. It just allows an accessible entrance at the front where all residents will come through. So once the front entrance improvements are complete, then we can focus on, I guess, some more circulation inside the building itself. So we issued a public request for proposals for the front entryway design, and the work was awarded to DRKR Architects Limited in October 2024 The design is complete and tender drawings and specs are ready to be issued within the coming weeks. So with council not meeting in July, we thought it prudent to bring this to council to potentially get awarding this work in mid-August. So schematics of the proposed work are attached. It's just a rough 3D schematic of what the front of the building will look like at the conclusion of construction should this project go forward. So like I say, fairly straightforward. Staff would like to award the tender in August and start construction in the late summer. Hence the reason for coming here. So a couple options. Council can grant authority to August Council Committee to approve awarding the tender should the tenders exceed the approved budget, or should the tenders exceed the approved budget, award of the work could be delayed until the August Council meeting. So as I mentioned, resources are $250,000 in the budget for this work. And strategic priorities wise, the construction does fit in council's approved 5-year capital budget and is aligned with council's strategic priority of service delivery, organizational excellence. So staff do recommend that that August Council Committee be granted authority for approving awarding the tender for this work. So motion's there, and I'm open to any questions that council may have.
Thank you. I'm prepared to entertain a motion. Councillor Patton.
I'd make a motion that council authorizes August Council Committee to approve awarding the tender for the planned accessibility upgrades to the front entrance of 1 Church Street if bid prices exceed the allocated budget.
Thank you, and seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Discussion on the motion. Any questions? Councillor Benwell.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. Thank you, David. I'm in support of this, but I do have a question, whether it be through the chair to you or to our CAO. I realize that there's items that we have to do as the building's aging and accessibility needs, but I'm just wondering where we're at. We spoke a couple of years ago, I think now, about what we were doing if we were looking into other options as we're maybe outgrowing this building. The parking's an ongoing issue. Heating in this building is an ongoing issue. I do see some with blankets. And there's some other issues, and I know that we have to make it accessible right now, and I am fully in support of that. I'm just wondering where we're at with those past discussions.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'll ask our CAO to address that, please.
Thank you through the Mayor to Council. First, I guess with regards to the building, folks are probably aware the province has included in their medium-term capital plan the development of an alternative court property, which would mean that should that move ahead, and I understand that there's a proposed design that is supposed to be happening within the next year, and I don't know the exact nature or time of that. That would mean that in essence, there would be a plan that the second floor of this building would be vacated by the courts to go to another building. Again, timing and does it happen, and that's an entire discussion that has to happen. So that at least potentially relieves one long-term pressure with regards to space. Those other items in the building, and yes, there's a number of those to be addressed. Right now, the accessibility and security in the building are two kind of pressing issues. And this work, as well as some internal work, is attempting to kind of alleviate those two pieces. So as we go into the fall and into the winter, at least they're addressed, but recognizing all those other things you brought up are still things that are being worked through. Biggest contingent piece right now is if the province is moving ahead, as they have suggested in their medium-term capital budget, then it does at least address the issue of space in this building. Still doesn't address those other issues that you've got.
So, sorry.
Continue. Yes. I know you don't have your mic, but continue.
Sorry.
There.
So I understand that and I agree with that. I'm just wondering, so will something come back to us in a report in the near future after the province figures out what they're doing?
Yes, CAO, please.
Through the chair. So yes, so obviously, we're continuing to look at timing from a potential perspective. And so we obviously want to look at that. The other reality of this building versus a new building, because ultimately that's what we'll be talking about, it probably would be one of the biggest purchases short of the rec center that we would have ever made in this municipal unit. So, you know, and it is an ever escalating number, what the cost of that building will be. But that all said, yes, our intention is that a full package would come back to council, looking at that cost, but also then looking at the upgrade costs within this building, if that second floor became available and all the other stuff. And I don't know, they're both gonna be big numbers, but certainly that's the intent. Once we can confirm that the monies that have been set aside in that budget by the province, in fact, will cause momentum, then we would come back and provide something to council at that.
And I think that was my main reason in asking, was because the prices of things keep going higher, so I just don't want to wait too long and then we're in a big number, so thanks.
Well, I think as the CAO said, it would be a big number either way, but it would be a huge number to put a new building up, and we are responsible to our taxpayers. So the lesser of the two, to have a building that we can work within with some changes would be probably the route to go. But we do have an issue on the table that right now is apart from that. Although it is part of, it is still apart from. And Deputy Mayor Sanderson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to David. David, what are the plans during the renovation period to handle traffic by the public, traffic in and out of the building?
Through Mayor Blair
Yes.
to Deputy Mayor Sanderson. So generally, the specifications, the contract will be to minimize disruptions at that front entrance. There will be inevitably sometimes where we're going to be basically moving people through the back entrance. It's inevitable when we're doing some of that construction, but the intent would be to do as much disruptive construction during non-peak hours, I guess would be the best way I could answer that.
Any other questions? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to David, if I could. I see it's called a front entrance redesign, so I'm looking at, and I went out the other morning and snapped that lock open and locked it on the front door. I mean, it's not suitable at all, it's not efficient, and it lets cold air in and heat out. Are we gonna change that front entrance system from doors? I'm looking at the picture there, it's a great picture, but are we gonna still use the old entrance door, or are we gonna change that whole front assembly there?
Through Mayor Blair to
Yes.
Councillor Johnson, yes, the entire front entryway, the door will be new, everything is going to be new, it'll have push buttons, it'll be secure with key access, so it will be complete, basically that whole vestibule will be completely changed around and with more efficient and insulated materials.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any further discussion on the motion? Then we have a motion before us, councillors. Are you ready for the question? The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, David. We'll move on to the next item, and I guess you're on again. This is the pumping station replacement and authority again for the August committee meeting to approve. David, please.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. Again, this is just another authority for August committee to approve because we are in the tendering phase for this project. So it's a pumping station replacement project for two separate pumping stations. So the purpose of this item again is to grant August Council Committee authority to award the tender for the replacement of two sewer pumping stations should the bid prices exceed the allocated budgets. So some background, council's approved 5-year capital budget includes $500,000 in fiscal 2025-2026 for the replacement of pumping station number 7 on Roby Street, which is across from Boston Pizza near Barry's Motel. Excluding the electrical control panel, which was previously purchased in a different fiscal year. And that work is planned to be 100% funded by sewer capital. In addition to that, council's approved 5-year capital budget also includes $550,000 in this fiscal year for the replacement of pumping station number 9 in Hilden. And that work is 50% funded by the Municipal Capital Growth Program up to $275,000, with the remainder to be funded by sewer capital. Some history on the stations. Original record drawings are not available for pumping station 7 on Roby Street, so its exact age is indeterminate. But we believe it to be at least the vintage of Hilden, which we have records from 1974. So both stations have reached the end of their lifespan. They're quite old. So Roby Street, pumping station number 7, it's currently located beneath the sidewalk along the north side of Roby Street. And as such, all maintenance activities there are a nightmare. They impact pedestrian traffic and require traffic control due to the proximity of Roby Street, which is one of the busiest streets in our county. And due to land constraints, traffic control costs and safety concerns, we made the decision that it's likely best to actually relocate that across the street to the vacant green space, which you can see in front of the mall, which is actually provincially owned right of way over there. So that discussion was had with the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works area manager, who gave approval for that to occur, just to get it out of a more congested, busy area. So in addition to that, neither of the pumping stations, because of their age, have a valve chamber. So as part of the replacement project, our intent is to install valve chambers at both stations. And for those of you who may not be familiar with valve chambers, because I know I wasn't before I started here, they're to allow routine maintenance activities to be conducted while minimizing the requirement for employees to actually get in the sewer wet well with the pumps, with the sewer that's pouring into the wet well itself. So it just allows some maintenance activities to be safer and more efficient for our municipal staff. So this work itself, we issued a request for proposals for the design, and that was awarded to EXP Services in January of this year. Design is complete, along with tender drawings and specifications that are ready to be tendered within the coming weeks. So the construction tender is planned to be issued within the next month. I would say probably within the next couple of weeks, so that will have us closing again before we get to that August council committee soon. Just based on the timelines of specific components of these stations, we really want to get that turnaround as quick as possible. So completion date of March 31st, 2026. So what we essentially envision is some of the groundwork, the civil work will be completed. Some of the pump components may be a bit delayed, but again, there's a large lead time on those. So the quicker we can get this tender awarded, should it come in over budget, the better. So some options here for council is, again, grant authority to the August council committee to approve awarding the tender should the tenders exceed the approved budget, or just wait, option number 2, until the August council meeting should that be required. So resources, 1.05 million for these two pumping stations. They do fit, again, this project does fit into the approved capital budget for now and is a part of the council strategic priorities for sustainable community infrastructure planning by replacing assets that are at end of life. So I'll open it to questions from anyone on council.
I'm prepared to entertain a motion before we go into discussion. Moved by Councillor Cooper, and you are moving that council authorizes August council committee to approve awarding the tender for the replacement of 2 sewer pumping stations, more specifically pumping station 7 on Roby Street and pumping station 9 in Hilden, if bid prices exceed the allocated budget. And you so move? Seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Patton. Discussion on the motion? Any questions of David on this issue? And are you ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, David. And the next item I believe you're dealing with as well. And that is MacElmon Pond Roundabout. It was on table, although we have discussed this a number of times. This is the tender award decision for the MacElmon Road Roundabout. David, please.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. It's me again. More interesting than the last two. So this item here is providing an update of where we're at on the MacElmon Road Roundabout, and just basically making a decision on the award of this tender. So a bit of background for those around the table who may need a bit of a refresher, brief history of the project. Following the transfer of divert lands to the municipality in 2008, staff began to look at options to develop the highway frontage properties on MacElmon Road and Highway 104 at exit 13. So in 2010, with the approval of council, staff retained a consulting firm to complete a signage and gateway study. And basically that study explored options for developing all along that area and creating roads that travel east and west from MacElmon Road. So as part of that, the province mandated that a roundabout be installed at that location. So at the time of the 2010 study, the cost to build the roundabout was estimated at 1.1 million. And as you'll see later on in my item, the costs have certainly inflated since 2010. So following the completion of the signage and gateway study, staff issued a request for proposal for design work, which was awarded to CBCL in 2010 for $75,000. However, design work did get stalled at 85% completion due to the complex archaeology requirements out into Bird. So it took approximately 2016 before sufficient archaeological testing was completed to allow for geotechnical testing to be completed prior to the roundabout design, which is required before the engineering could be done for that design. And it was determined that due to site constraints of the established archaeological buffer zones, two-lane roundabout, which was originally proposed, just couldn't be constructed. It couldn't fit in the footprint that exists out there. So a single-lane roundabout was then investigated as a possibility. So this went back to the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works, and they required a new traffic study, which had been completed for a two-lane roundabout, but now we needed a new traffic study for a single-lane roundabout, and that study was completed in 2024, and it concluded that the single-lane roundabout was still feasible at this location. So last year we had our consultant CBCL revise their design to a single lane roundabout in order to fit inside the existing site constraints in preparation for a resubmission to the province. So IFT drawings, issue for tender drawings were completed and submitted by CBCL to the municipality and the province. Well, mostly the municipality for tendering at the end of May. So we were a little bit late getting out for a tender on this project. There was a lot of back and forth with the province during the various design stages at 50%, 85%, 95%, 100%. So just some money numbers in the approved 5-year capital budget. Council included $3 million in this fiscal year for construction of the roundabout. And that estimate was based on the cost of other local roundabout projects of similar size and scope around us geographically. In addition to this $3 million that's budgeted for this year, council's also included $2 million next year to complete approximately 400 meters of road construction extending from the new roundabout to provide some highway frontage, which will include sewer, water infrastructure, etc. And then again, as you're aware, at the June 12th Council Committee meeting, Council Committee directed staff to proceed with the extension of both water and sewer services along MacElmon Road. The total estimated cost $1.38 million, which is directly in the same, not too far from where this roundabout is going to be constructed. So I guess the point of that is there's a potential to combine these projects should we choose to do that in the future. So the roundabout project was tendered independently and advertised publicly on June 3rd. And we had a total of 9 companies requesting the tender documents, with 3 tenders received by the closing time of 3 p.m. June 20th. And the results are summarized in the table there in front of you, with a low bid being from Dexter Construction at $4.662 million. So the costs are higher than what we had estimated. I do have some ideas of why I believe those costs are higher. It's most time of year, the later. It's a well-known fact that the later in the construction season you go, the higher the costs go from contractors because of their capacity and scheduling that work. So we had a completion date of November 30th established. So contractors were going to need to focus additional resources in order to meet those project timelines. And there is some cost built in there basically on the uncertainty of the suitability of some of the existing soil in that area. There's a potential for needing to truck in a significant amount of rock fill just to build some of this roundabout. So that has inflated the cost as well. And as everyone knows, post-pandemic the construction market is highly variable, a lot of ups and downs and inflated costs. So if this project was awarded, work is scheduled to begin at the end of July and will take all of 18 weeks to reach completion. And I do have another note here that after the roundabout tender closed, a discussion with NSPW, the province, did take place regarding the future of the project. And at that time, they indicated there's a potential that they would allow a phased approach for that intersection to move forward. That approach could be a simpler intersection as opposed to a roundabout for an interim basis until the traffic volumes warrant a roundabout at that location. So if that was explored, a development agreement would need to be established between the municipality and the province. But ultimately, there's no formal guarantee that it would be accepted. It was just discussed as a possibility. So staff do have that on our radar, and if this project isn't awarded, then we would follow up later in the fall based on some discussions. So Few options are on the table. Council could elect to award the tender to Dexter Construction for a total contract price of $4.662 million and $180 excluding HST, and the work would begin in July. Council could also elect to direct staff to re-tender the project over the winter in combination with the additional construction work along MacElmon Road in an effort to obtain better pricing. Council could elect to direct staff to delay the roundabout construction and explore a development agreement with the province to construct a single intersection and then construct a roundabout when traffic volumes warrant it. Or council could elect not to award the tender and cease the exploration of development at that location at this time. So again, resources, just some money there. $3 million was budgeted, with $250,000 coming from gas tax in the capital budget, $750,000 from the capital reserve fund, and $2 million from debt. In addition to the tender value, there's obviously other costs as well that do come with that, including staff time, materials testing, rebated tax, miscellaneous costs for Nova Scotia Power moving some poles, and some contingency. So really what we're looking at is about a $5.1 million commitment at the current tender prices. So basically at this time, based on the numbers, staff do recommend that the tender is canceled, reviewed, and re-tendered over the winter months in an effort to reduce costs. The motion here is in front of you, and I will hand it back over.
Thank you, David. I'm prepared to entertain a motion. Councillor Benoit.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. I'd like to make a motion and then speak on it if I may.
Certainly.
I'd like to make a motion that council could elect to. Just one sec, that the tender for the new MacElmon Road roundabout not be awarded at this time, that staff review and retender the work with the expand. One second, sorry. I wanted to go with option number 2. That's the same as okay, sorry. I'll repeat that. That the tender for the new MacElmon Road roundabout not be awarded at this time, and that staff review and retender the work with expanded scope for the 26-27 construction season.
I have a seconder, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stanton. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Benoit.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. Through you to David. I don't want to see this go any longer because this has been talked about before my time, I think, and the prices are just going to continue to increase. But one thing that I just have a question about, where it says after the roundabout tender closed, a discussion with Nova Scotia Public Works took place about doing a phased approach for the intersection. And I know that Public Works has been back and forth on this topic for years. So why is Nova Scotia Public Works just offering that approach now instead of, like, I'm just baffled because it's been back and forth and we couldn't get anywhere. And now all of a sudden we're ready to go to tender and now they want to give us an option. So maybe that's not a question to have, but I'm just baffled by it. That's all.
Well, you have a question on the floor, and David, you're prepared to answer.
Through Mayor Blair to Councillor Benoit, what the province does is not always predictable. I did spend some time with
I always appreciate diplomacy.
Yes. I like to think that we do have a very good relationship with the province locally now as well. And,
We do.
I believe because of I think they wanted us to really go through the process and explore what the best solution really is. And then now that we're saying maybe this isn't so realistic, I think they're more willing to work with this time. So again, there's been no guarantees made. But like I say, they're softening a little bit on that approach.
All right, thank you.
And we still have the other exit on the other side as well. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David, thank you for plans. It was an interesting read. Is this rotary in the plans LCV compatible?
Through Mayor Blair to Councillor Leggett, yes. Our designer CBCL assured us that that LCVs would have no issue. They will ride up on the mountable curb in the center island, similar to a mass town. But essentially those LCV movements have been accounted for. The province has verified that is exactly.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess that takes me down the next road, but I think an intersection is far more advantageous. If you have to take E-trains and LCVs over the center, you might as well just have an intersection, drive straight through. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Yes, well, long combination vehicles and the by trains were the big thing that we were trying to deal with, so they don't have to go down the 102 and turn in another exit and then backtrack to get into the Debert Business Park. Further questions, further comments? Then are you ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Fundy Discovery Site Pedestrian Active Transportation Bridge and the award of an RFP. And I'm going to ask our Director of Community Development, Paul Smith, to address this, please. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this action item really falls on the heels of an information item I presented to you at your committee meeting 2 weeks ago, and its purpose really is to bring forward to you for your consideration award of the bridge project, which the pedestrian bridge project at the Fundy Discovery Site Bridge, which has been before council several times over the last 3 years now. At your committee meeting 2 weeks ago, I sort of provided a bit of an overview, noting that we've carried about $11 million in our capital budget since 2020, and pursued sort of a conventional design build approach to the bridge, which hasn't worked out on the 2 previous occasions. We sort of changed course in a last ditched effort to use a design build approach, with the hope of reducing some of the project costs. And as I indicated, then that approach seemed to work, given that all of the 6 respondents to the RFP were much closer. In fact, 2 were under our project budget. The RFP was issued on April 8th, closed on June 2nd, and we created a detailed sort of assessment rubric to evaluate the responses. 80% of the value in that assessment rubric was allocated towards price and experience, while 20% was assigned to sort of design features. So it allowed us to think about the shape, form, maintenance, and different components like lighting and railing systems that were sort of preferable. The table at the bottom of the first page sort of outlines the bids that we received, the base bids we received, the lowest being WRD TRS team, which had a base price of 7.9 million and a little bit. I would also note that some of these baseline prices had some alternate pricing for either enhancements or reductions, and that could sort of increase costs or slightly decrease costs somewhat, but might not have been sort of the best options. I must sort of acknowledge the quality of the submissions, and there were 2 that really stood out, the WRD, TDS, and the below this structure craft, which were really sort of iconic structures that had a pretty impactful mark on the landscape. And I must also note that our sort of assessment team, while I was involved, I relied heavily on the experienced staff at Cowie and David, our project engineer, who's had bridge experience with, I guess, in a former life with NSPW. So they provided a great deal of assistance in sort of evaluating these proposals on particularly the technical merits, and really did a lot of the heavy lifting throughout the whole process. So to that, I'm extremely appreciative. And while all of the proposals really had distinct qualities, as we went through sort of the math of the evaluation process, the WRD TRS sort of emerged as the front runner, and scoring extremely high on price, and producing a design that's really sensitive to the environment. We before sort of the whole evaluation took place, and getting a sense of how things pan out, the evaluation team conducted an interview with that proponent, just to sort of try to address anything that we might have missed in the proposal, and wanted to ensure that we were completely satisfied that it needed our technical requirements and expectations. Which at the end of the day it did, and you'll see a couple of pictures that depicts the concept for the bridge. This is just in the very early design, conceptual design process. So there's we didn't expect any of the respondents to do sort of a full design, but it will be an evolving process. When considering the WRD TDRS proposal, we also thought it would be prudent to carry a construction contingency somewhere in the order of 8 to 10% to account for any unforeseen circumstances. My experience with the REC project sort of highlighted the possibilities of change orders and not being able to sort of account for everything, and it's always prudent to have a contingency fund that you can draw on if need be, to deal with sort of any ancillary costs that we may come across. So that, contingency based on 7.9 million would amount to $711,000. And as a sort of condition of our funding agreement with the federal and provincial governments, who will be funding 73.6% of this, or somewhere around 74.6. Anyway, just about 3/4 of the total project costs. Because it's a very sort of detailed and capital intensive project, we need to, as a condition of that funding, engage a third-party project manager to sort of act on our behalf, to ensure that quality control, scheduling, project budget, and contract administration, permitting oversight is being achieved. And we've used project management services under the ICIP program for the solar installations at the wastewater treatment facility, and we will be in both the Debert and Tatamagouche arenas. And we've found that it's just worked exceptionally well, and it's really taken it's given us the resources, to to do what we just can't do well. It's because I'm not suggesting that we don't have the in-house capacity, expertise to do it, but it's really a matter of capacity. Project management costs are roughly about 6% of the construction costs, which would be just over $500,000, and then factoring in sort of our rebatable HST would add an additional $350,000 for a total project cost of $9.479039. This is a significant infrastructure investment, but one that has been planned for many years now. You've carried, in this case, more than enough money in your capital budget to see it through. And that being the case, you know, when you factor in the net HST, construction management fees, and contingency, it still stands to be under $1.5 million under your capital budget amount. It's interesting. Yeah, we don't see a lot of wooden timber structures here on the East Coast. They've been used for centuries out west. And actually, that's where a lot of the timber to be used in this would come from, BC. But we've asked Cowie to sort of delve into that a little bit further, and because at the committee meeting there was some council discussion around you know, what we would project the maintenance costs to be. And Cowie said that, you know, generally wooden structures require less maintenance than concrete and steel due to sort of corrosion, flaking, needing to be repainting. But wood, and it's really difficult to sort of estimate what those maintenance costs would be, but we're sort of in the order of 1% of the construction cost annually. I will point out that, you know, while this project is does fall under sort of our budget amount made under the ICIP program, there's a certain amount of funds that were available for a group of projects that were funded through this application. The bridge project being the most significant. We did the Balefill Sidewalk project under this fund last year. We had planned on doing the Hilden Sidewalk extension, but that occurred before we got funding, and so it wasn't, the cost for that project didn't qualify for funding, but the money was still approved, eventually approved, and lumped into this. So we have two outstanding projects yet to complete. The tidal bore multi-use pathway, which follows the tidal bore road from the Fundy discovery site down to the Copper Trail, and the Pictou Road multi-use pathway from Valley Crossroads up to Crowland Drive, I believe. It looks like you know, I mean, estimates for sidewalk projects have increased significantly over the last number of years. And our original budget amounts, which were made, you know, 5 years ago when applying to the feds in the province for ICIP, have didn't account for sort of the level of escalation that we're actually seeing now. So there is a set amount of money available that we can name direct towards these projects, but the fact the Brookfield sidewalk was over budget by over the budget amount by $850,000, and you know, it's likely the Pictou Road, Tidal Bore Road multi-use pathway may follow that trend. So yes, in the future, we'll sort of need to reevaluate how what remaining funds are how they're allocated. So not much more to say other than this has been a strategic, the Fundy Discovery Site's been a strategic priority council since its acquisition 10 years ago. And, you know, the bridge project, while it's an attractive feature, it also serves an important function in that it will provide a safe connection between the north and south, areas north and south of the Salmon River, where there are few safe crossing options that currently exist. Project also lends itself to to many of the objectives outlined in Carbon-Free Colchester Plan 2050, as well as the pillars that form your foundation of your recently the strategic plan. So in conclusion, myself and my subject matter experts have evaluated the proposals and have concluded that in consideration of the criteria that the project be awarded to WRD and TRS as it is compliant with the technical requirements and represents good value. And that we ask council to authorize staff to begin to negotiate an acceptable contract for such, and as well as the expenditure of 2,530,903 towards its share of this project.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm prepared to entertain a motion. Councillor Weatherby.
Before I do the motion, I'm quite happy with the wooden design. I think that's great, especially after seeing the Bass River Bridge. I would be prepared to make a motion that council approves the award of a contract to WRD and TRS for the design and construction of a pedestrian active transportation bridge for the Fundy Discovery Site, and authorize staff to negotiate and enter into an acceptable contract for such, and that council authorize the expenditure of 2,530,903 towards its share of the total project cost.
And do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Richardson. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you over to Paul. I know a few years ago we were discussing about, social power lines and
Pardon me.
poles. Are those still an issue there, Paul, or those have to be moved to accommodate the building of this bridge?
No, I'm sorry, through the mayor, through
Yes.
you, councillor.
Paul, please.
We were always led to believe that Nova Scotia Power was committed to relocating the lines around the property. That was their plan up until this spring when we met them. I think that is their long-term plan. In the short term, the plan is to de-energize both sets of lines and provide insulators on them to allow for the construction. That was spelled out in the RFP, so all of the respondents were aware of sort of that constraint.
Councillor Cooper.
Mayor Blair, not a question, just a comment. I always thought that the sixth option would be the best one. Turned out to be the most expensive, and very happy to see the design on the cheapest one. It's quite impressive to me. I think it really fits in with what's meant to do, connect biking and the trails up there. I think it's quite amazing. We got that good a design and that good a price. So I'm really happy. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Counselor Weatherby.
Through the chair to Paul. In your report, it discusses a 1% a year or roughly a $95,000 annual maintenance amount and possibly a contingency for replacement of supports. Is that going to be a budget item every year or?
And Paul, please.
To you, Counselor, through the mayor. Yeah, 1% would be towards the sort of construction cost, so excluding contingency at HST. So it's roughly in the order of 79,000 or $80,000. And it's just a fund that's set up to be available to make repairs if they're needed. Much like this building, where you start to contribute to a fund that will help with, do improvements on incrementally. It doesn't. I mean, the life expectancy of wooden bridges is the same, if not longer, than concrete and steel. So there are rail bridges in BC that are over 100 years old, wooden rail bridges that are still functioning today. So it's an amount that sort of you may want to sort of set aside and to look at future improvements, major restoration if that's needed. We do know that bearings will need to be replaced every 20 or 25 years. That involves sort of lifting pieces of the bridge and placing the bearings where they intersect with the back support structure. So.
Councilor
So
Weatherby.
is the short of it, yes, it will be a contingency every year, or no, it won't be a contingency every year?
Well, will it be a line budget?
That's the simple way to look at it, yep.
I'll need to speak with our financial people to see how we handle other projects.
Any comments?
Thank you.
Like the rec and.
Our CAO, please.
Thank you through the chair. So typically anytime you build a new capital item, you would set aside some kind of a capital replacement fund. And typically you would have some kind of a maintenance fund. The amount and the frequency you contribute to that would be part of our budget discussion. Yes, the expectation would be you would be setting something aside.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Fletcher.
Through the chair to Paul, is there thought of, like, I know this has been discussed before I was here, so is there thought of trails on the north side? Is it gonna link up is there thoughts of trail, like the old Barnes Trail, or is there thoughts of trails going on that side of the river sometime?
And Paul, please.
For the mayor to the councillor, on the north side of the Salmon River, the province, Nova Scotia Public Works completed a shoulder extension up to the Onslow School, and that basically is the Nova Scotia Blue Route, which goes from Onslow up to Wallace. They promote it as an active transportation route. So, the time being, that's what exists.
Okay.
Anything further, Councillor Fletcher?
Just for the record, I'm not for this. I can't support this. I think we are gonna have more budgetary issues later for different things, and my own opinion is I'm not in favor.
Thank you, Councillor, and Councillor Martel.
First, I want to say that this bridge looks absolutely spectacular, and I know how much work has gone into this over the past 10 years. I was on the original steering committee for the Palliser site, and the conversation and the planning that has gone around that is phenomenal. The $2.5 million that we will be putting into a bridge virtually to nowhere is really hard for me to decide to support that. Where even earlier this week, I sat through the hearing in Tatamagouche for the water utility that we're putting their rates up over 30%, and we can't get anyone on potentially, maybe for at least another 3 years. You know, we've got DeBert Airport that has been put off and put off and put off, needing dire repairs to keep that going as an economic driver. So as much as I appreciate the work and how stunning this bridge is, I cannot feasibly support the $2.5 million at this point in time to build that bridge.
Deputy Mayor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mayor. When I looked at the 6 or so drawings that were rendered, this was the one that jumped out at me right away. I think it is a lovely, beautiful wooden bridge. You said timbers from BC potentially coming this way? Question to our director.
Yes, Paul, please.
Yes, thanks, good mayor to you. Yeah, it's BC Douglas fir, Alaskan pine. There were two wooden structures and they're, the Bullfed sourced western coast, wood, so.
All right, it's better than our hemlock and.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot better. Okay. So yeah, I've had residents in my district very supportive of a bridge for active transportation. I've had residents very unsupportive of a bridge for just active transportation. It's not a vehicular bridge. So I'm on the fence. I can see it being a real draw, tourism wise, and potentially an economic driver. I can see it being a bit of a safety risk. There's a lot of young adults that use the Fundy Discovery site at night and tend to loiter there and drop their garbage there. And the bridge is open. I worry about people getting on there potentially under the influence. And I have had discussions with our fire brigade chief, and they've rescued people out of the mud when they've gone in. When the tide was low, I just wonder if we're creating a potential problem, safety problem. But if you can convince me that the benefits outweigh the potential hazards and costs, I would be very supportive of this. Those that are bikers, they want it. It's a wonderful opportunity to link a whole bunch of things up. So I just, it's hard to know down the road what we're going to experience in terms of economic benefits from this. You never know. That's the problem. You don't know until you've built it and see what happens.
And that's the way it could be with a lot of things, Councillor. Councillor Benoit.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. I would echo Councillor or Deputy Mayor Sanderson, because on the other side of the bridge, I have the exact same experience with residents there. I've spoken to many, and it's both, it's divided. A lot are very excited about it, and the hopes that it may help get that crosswalk over there at one point, but they're excited. There's parents, and I think I've spoken on this before, there's parents that are excited because if their kids are working in Truro, they'll be able to safely go across that bridge rather than taking the highway and getting access that way. There's a lot of seniors in Fundy gemstones and other singular houses there that walk that road regularly. So for them to be able to continue on going through the path, it's very much, they're very much looking forward to it. I do share the concerns of people there at nighttime, and I mean, I know that can happen anywhere, And I'm happy of all the choices that are chosen is this bridge, because like I've said before, when we were looking at some of those even more expensive ones, I'm like, people are gonna go on it no matter what it's built of. So I don't think it has to be an even more elaborate design than it is. I mean, the Fundy Discovery Site is a tourist attraction as it stands now, so, and municipality has done a fantastic job with it so far, so I'm the exact same way. I see both sides of it. It is a lot of money, and I can see all the work that we could be doing with that money, whether it be roads, whether it be the airport, whether it be housing. There's so many other things we could be using, but this is where we're at, and this has been on the table now for a number of years, and I think it's time to close this chapter one way or another, so. the
Thank you.
decision will be hard.
Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a very attractive looking bridge, looks very, it would be a fun, nice bridge to walk over. I see it nothing as being much more than a huge liability for the county. At the last meeting, we asked for some budget maintenance costs, and the 1% Councillor Weatherby referred to, there's also another line item in the proposal that's 5%. But what's the cost of keeping the snow off it in the winter time? Who's gonna pick up the debris that could be on it? Like having this thing open 24 hours a day, as Deputy Mayor Sanderson suggested, could cause people to do unsafe things. So I think it's a great idea. It looks great. I personally don't support it, only because some people said there's other money places that we can spend money. I really like the design. I don't think it's our bailiwick. I think it's
The bridge is something we've been talking about for a long time to join the North and the South Shores. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you back to Paul. Is this something we look at keeping open 12 months out of the year, like through the winter, or just strictly seasonal for spring, summer, and fall?
Through the mayor to you, Councillor. It's likely be open year round. Right now, our sidewalk plows need to go on the highway. Oh. Michelle might be able to correct me, because I'm not entirely familiar with their operation, but they need to get to Onslow, basically plow sidewalks. And it takes half an hour to 40 minutes to make that safe circuit. I don't think it's on the highway. I think they may have to come through town and then out, so there's no other way to get there. I know the Public Works maintenance supervisors said this would greatly improve their efficiency for sidewalk plowing.
Anything to add to that? Our Director of Public Works, Michelle?
Through the chair, so we do go through town. We have to go to North River to do the sidewalks, and so we kind of go behind the mall and do North River first. It would shorten our time. The bridge has been designed to carry the weight of a sidewalk plow. I think some of the details about the wooden decking would have to be finalized in order for us to not tear up the decking with our sidewalk plow. So I'd say some of those details are still going to be all right.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson?
So I guess the short answer, yes. It is gonna be open all year round. So with that, you're gonna have ATVs, snowmobiles, anything else with wheels and tracks traveling across there to get over to Burger Alley from the other side or vice versa from our side. And with that, who's gonna police these vehicles that are going back and forth? That's, I'm not looking for the answer here tonight. Because that's gonna be the other issue if we're not shutting this thing down in the winter time. Going across, trust me. Like the idea, I've never said really anything against it, but I look at, we can't even get a northbound lane on the highway bridge over Salmon River Flat that we can drive a vehicle over it with a couple pillars under it. And I know we're putting 4 or 5 pillars under this design here. And, I look back over time and we've been trying to take tidal power from the Bay of Fundy over the last 10 or 15 years, and we haven't mastered that. There's another company in the paper today that's going back down. This is some of the harshest weather and tides in the world here. we don't know what it's gonna do to these pillars, and I don't know if the manufacturers do or not either, but I mean, this is like the Northumberland Strait, it's pretty hairy there a couple times a day at high and low tide. I'd hate to see us get into something that, got 4 or 5 pillars out there, and all of a sudden, they're not standing up, just because of the tides they're running with this thing. So I look at it, great idea, it's too bad it wasn't accessible from both sides of the highway. When I say both sides, people that are entering the 102 heading towards Halifax, they could probably get at it, but if you're coming from the Digby Ferry or the Yarmouth Ferry and you're heading northbound to Cape Breton or Amherst, you're already by it at the time to see it. So you've got, what do you do? If you don't jump off in Onslow, you're gone and you're by it. But I like it. As you know, I'm fiscally responsible to the taxpayers of not only my district but the county, but I see this as a huge one as opposed to a need. But beautiful spot. You know what? It's one of these things that we're either gonna be winners with it, or it's gonna come back and haunt us for a long time. I'm not prepared. I won't be here when it comes back and haunt us, trust me, but somebody will. Maybe blame it on the council of today that had the genius idea of doing this. And at this point, I'm not.
We can see some other things happening that way, Counselor, but Deputy Mayor Sanderson,
Thank you,
please.
Mayor. As it is taxpayers' dollars, is there any way we could ask the question of our residents, do you want the bridge? Is this, is that
Yes, I
possible?
suppose you could certainly do that. We've only been talking about it for what, 15 years?
We have, but not.
We have,
the
and
residents.
well, actually, that's not quite accurate. I know I have done a lot of presentations to various groups and organizations and have spoken about it for a number of years with the first design, the large arc design. And people were very excited to think that we were going to have something in our community that would be a positive for active transportation for Colchester County, especially with the Blue Route coming through from Masstown and along the Onslow Road. The bikers and the hikers and the walkers that I have spoken with are all very excited about it. And you're looking at an almost $10 million project for $2.5 million. That would be a benefit to the community for active transportation. And we have pledged Colchester County to be a supporter of active transportation. This is one way to do it. We know that we have a lot of other expenses. That's clearly been identified. We know that we are totally responsible to our taxpayers. And for this, I like to look at the positive side. And the positive side, in my opinion, is the commitment that we have made to active transportation in Colchester County. And this is one piece of it. The other part is that this is Geosite 1 coming from the International Airport for people who are looking for the Fundy UNESCO Global Geopark sites. This is one of them. This is a great facility, and this is with our amphitheater and our natural playground, the picnic place for having your being seated along the tourist attraction. I think it's one of our major tourist attractions in Colchester County. And that was rather a long-winded answer,
Well, I
but
don't disagree with all the benefits. I just, I didn't know you were speaking with people
all
about
the
this.
time.
And there's 35,000 people in the county. I don't imagine we've had the opportunity to ask all of our residents. This is maybe there will be a lot of support for it, but I don't know. As I said earlier, and Councillor Benoit said, there's people on both sides of the fence or both sides of the bridge. Some really want it, and some that no, we need our roads fixed. We need housing to be a priority. There's all kinds of other places. But I just wondered if there was an opportunity to reach out to more people and ask. Then I would feel more confident in spending their money.
Okay, who's next? Councillor Benoit.
Thank you, Mayor Blair, and I had that down as well, but I didn't think that was appropriate to ask because if we put even a mail out or something along that lines, I don't think that, I think we're doing the due diligence of our taxpayers by asking their thoughts on this, because like I said, it's been like people that I've talked to, I haven't talked to thousands, I haven't talked to hundreds, but I've talked to quite a few. And it's been somewhat split, so I would, and I've always been a proponent of reaching out to the residents and having community engagements, and I think this is a huge one that deserves to have community engagement and see what everybody thinks, and we may not get many responses back, but I mean, if we put engagement out about getting their subdivision paved, which I know it only pertains to those people in that subdivision. My point is just that if we can do it for that, I think we should be able to do it for such a huge venture that we're doing. And I am in support of it. I think it's a beautiful idea, but I'm just thinking of all the other things that that money could go for as well. And I think it doesn't hurt to have community engagement once again.
And Colchester County has been very strong on community engagement for anything that we do. So that's anything further, Councillor?
No.
Councillor Martel?
Thank you, through you to Paul.
Yes.
For clarity on the budget, I see in your notes that this has come in under budget by almost $1.5 million. Of the 2.5 million that the county would put in for its share to build the bridge, that money has been set aside over the past 10 years and is in a fund ready to go for this, separate than our regular capital. This was specific for this project.
Paul, please.
Through the mayor to you,
Yes.
it's been allocated in our 5-year capital budget for at least the last 5 years. In terms of access to cash, I have to defer to Scott on just how that money it is actually, whether it's sitting in the bank or otherwise, but it has been in our capital.
Thank you, Paul. Anything further, Councillor?
No, thank you.
Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Blair. Being on here the council so long, I keep forgetting about the fact that I've heard all this many years ago. Council talked this through many nights and many meetings, and yeah, we had all kinds of talk to residents and everything else years ago. And even people my way, totally excited about, this whole project. So they've been really happy with it ever since. Lots of people I know that come on the playground, picnics there, out of war. I can see this in line with people watching the war, the future sort of thing. I think this is kind of one of those things that you can do with regular stuff all the time, really, but you have to do things that stand out. You don't do things that stand out, why bother coming here? I think this is an iconic part of this whole project. We did our due diligence. We didn't say we're gonna spend $10 million and build a bridge. We said when we can afford it. That's why it's been going on so long. We can afford it. We can get most of the funding from other sources if we have. That's when we do it. And even then, we didn't do it till we, Paul and his group, did it 3 times to get it. Now we can do this. I can afford it. I totally 100% support it. I think it's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Kennedy, please.
I concur with Councillor just spoke, Councillor Cooper. I think we gotta move ahead. I mean, we fix roads, we do all kinds of things. We gotta look at the present and the future and where we're going with this. If council doesn't do something other than just fix roads and keep things going, there's no movement ahead. So we gotta start looking at this as it's been around a long time. I've been hearing about it even before I was on council. Let's make a decision. Let's move ahead and let's put the bridge in. It's a good price. There's a lot of people that are going to enjoy it, putting that tourist industry in and etc.
what do we got to show? We have nothing. So come on, add the bridge in. And it'll be an asset to people who use it, people who move from one side to the other, people who bike and walk, etc. And our seniors. Thank you. I want to
Thank you.
support it.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. And Councillor Benoit, this is your third time to speak.
Thank you. Through you to Paul.
Yes,
Where we, with the Fundy Discovery site, we didn't always have it open in the winter, or no, we always had it open in the wintertime. We just didn't have the bathrooms open in the wintertime. Okay, I guess I was just wondering if it would make sense for the first couple of years or a few years, see how it goes and not have this open in the winter time, just have it open for the spring, summer, fall. I think like Councillor Leggett had mentioned, just see where we're at there. And then once we figure out with Michelle as our Director of Public Works about the plowing and how that will work and stuff. Just a thought, just maybe if we do decide to move ahead, maybe we just leave it closed for the winter time for now. Just a thought.
appreciate that, Councillor. Paul, any response?
Yeah, through you to Counselor. Yeah, that's certainly, your call in terms of when it's open. I will note that it will be designed with removable bollards that should prevent all-terrain vehicles and skidoos from using it. Removable by public works crews that need to access the north side of the river for sidewalk. So,
okay.
But you're right. The bathrooms at the Fundy Discovery site, due to public demand, had to keep them open.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Richardson, please.
You to Scott, just wanted to give you a chance to explain the finances behind it.
Yes, and Scott, please. Our Director of Corporate Services, Scott, please.
Sure. Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor. The way the financing worked, we had a couple of sources we were going to rely on for municipal funding. We have a municipal infrastructure reserve set up that we've been using in the past for the Discovery site. And we had planned to use 900,000 from that. In addition to that, we had planned to use the operating reserve fund, and we were going to draw 2 million from that. That was on the budget number where we anticipated an $11 million project. And the remaining funds were going to come from the federal provincial grant, and that was 8.1 million.
Thank you, Scott. Anything further, Councillor? Is there any further discussion on this motion, Council? Then are you ready for the question? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay.
Hey,
Nays, please raise your hands. Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Patton, Councillor Martel, Councillor Johnson, and Councillor Leggett. That is 7 to 5. Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. And our next item on the agenda is the Central Nova Scotia Tourism Development Society, a memorandum of association and bylaws approval. And I'm going to ask our Jen, please, to address this. Development Officer, Jen.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. So the purpose of this evening's item is to seek council approval on a memorandum of association and bylaws for the Central Nova Scotia Tourism Development Society. As you're aware, we've passed an MOU to enter into an agreement with our regional partners, Town of Truro, Stewiacke, and Millbrook First Nation to develop and form a regional development tourism society. The MOU has been established and signed by all 4 parties. We've also created an executive committee to start to action some activities of the society. One being a public call for applicants to sit on the board of directors. So that public call has gone out and we've had a good response for proponents for board composition, and the proposed composition of the board looks promising. So just some background information before we speak to the bylaws to form the association. So with that being said, the next step is to formally establish the society through the incorporation of the Central Nova Scotia Tourism Development Society under the Societies Act, and to register its bylaws in accordance with its incorporation. So this evening within your package, there is the memorandum of association, and the bylaws, and they're included as attachments number 1 and number 2. To provide just a little bit of context and information to each of these documents. The MOA essentially establishes the foundation of the society under the Societies Acts, or under the Society Act. And it also establishes the purpose and the objectives of the society, which, as you're aware, are to administer marketing levy funds for the purpose of tourism development and destination development in our region. It also speaks to assets and financial structure. There's a dissolution clause if a party decides to dissolve or remove their funding from the association, and it also defines the geographic landscape of the organization. Then the bylaws, they provide the operational framework for the society's governance and accountability. So the partners of the association, Millbrook First Nation, Stewiacke, Carroll, and Colchester, form the membership of the society. And there is some safeguards within the formation of these bylaws to ensure there's a bit of control and authority over how the association operates. And I'll get into that a little bit as we go along. But when I mention these members, those are your authority voting members when we speak to any type of major decision. So for example, operating budgets, budget planning, appointment of directors, all of those types of items have to be approved by a 3/4 vote of your 4 founding municipal First Nation members, which allows for a little bit of governance when it comes to authority decision when with regards to financial decision and board composition. Then on top of that, there will be a total of 11 directors, as I mentioned, the 4 municipal band members, and then 7 industry members, which should soon be formed and elected to our board in the near future. With that being said, these directors will serve a 2-year term up to a maximum of 4 consecutive terms. So I spoke to this a little bit before, but the bylaws and major decisions would be required to be approved by 3/4 support from all your members. On top of that, within directors meetings, so your larger board, for quorum, we do require 3/4 of those members to be in attendance for board meetings, which essentially safeguards that, let's say all 4 of those members are unable to attend a board meeting, even your less substantive decisions still cannot be made. That doesn't mean that your industry can't outvote your board or your municipal reps on decisions like a marketing initiative or an event fund. But it does mean that the membership with regards to municipal representation does need to be in attendance for all decisions, which at least then allows us to be informed on how decisions are being made, and also allows for these executive committee members to provide input on the decisions as well. The appointment of all of these officers would be annually at your AGM, and any type of appointment would be required 3/4 vote of your municipal partners. With regards to funding controls, the society is not permitted to borrow funds or make any type of loans. Audited financial statements are required annually, and there will be staffing to support the activity of the society. So at this point, the next step is to establish the society and their formal incorporation. I will note that kind of over the next couple of weeks, all 4 entities will be bringing these bylaws to their respective councils for approval. But yet, I do believe you're the first council to see these bylaws. So I would recommend that any type of approval of the bylaws should be contingent on approval from all other parties as well. And then on top of that, I think there should be provision provided within the motion that there should be some authority to legal counsel and our CEO just to make minor or non-substantial changes to the bylaw should there be a request by Town of Truro or Stewiacke or Millbrook. Nothing that would change the intent or the I guess core provisions of the bylaws. Things like administrative wording is all I'm trying to say. With that being said, the recommendation is to approve the MOA and the bylaws as presented this evening, but happy to answer questions if there's any. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jen. I'm prepared to entertain a motion. Did I see? Councillor Martell, please.
I'd like to make a motion that council approve the memorandum of association and bylaws for the Central Nova Scotia Tourism Development Society as presented, conditional upon approval by all municipal and band partners, and the council authorize the CAO and legal counsel to make non-material revisions if required once review is completed by the regional partners.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Johnson. And discussion on the motion. Any questions? Councillor Cooper.
I like it, but got a little bit of once burned, twice learned sort of thing, and things that have happened in the courts recently. So I would like to see, I don't want to, people you put on there, we want to give them the ability to make decisions. But if half of the people that we have elected that are on there don't support it, I kind of think we're going the wrong direction. Sort of thing. So I'd like to have an additional line put in there that any vote would have to be supported by 50% of the elected directors.
Or something.
Decisions for 3/4. Nothing.
Yes, Jen, please.
If I may comment on that, through the chair to the councillor, the intent behind that is that, the money is industry money, meaning that it's being collected from our guests and it's I guess the bylaw is a flow through of this money. And there's been a lot of buy-in from our regional operators and industry on the fact that there will be a society that's able to make decisions. I do think legal did put some time and energy into considering what type of decisions really need municipal authority. However, of course, if council wants to consider all decisions need municipal authority, that could be a conversation with our regional partners. I do suspect there might be, it might be a larger conversation among our regional partners because this is the intent going into the conversation originally.
That's a good thought, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Dennis? Or Solicitor Dennis, please.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to the councillor. I mean, the fundamental difference between this and other examples is this is money raised for a specific purpose. There are provisions that allow us to withdraw if you're not happy with the way the direction is. You have to give a year's notice. We built in a year's notice because we didn't want to be blindsided by anybody if someone else pulled out, right? So there has to be some planning. But it doesn't have the continual exposure that you do have with other examples. So we thought this one through as learning from examples, but the risk is just such a different risk we're managing here. And I think to Jen's point, industries had to buy into this. And one of the buy-ins is the ability to make decisions, even if the 4 municipal units may not agree on a particular initiative. And if at the end of the day, there's also an operating agreement that would go along with this. So there'd be some control elements there, including the number of staff that can be hired is limited to 2. So there's some other things we've constructed along the way to put some parameters here. So it's not just staffing up all of a sudden and taking all the marketing, levying, hiring a bunch of people and no money to spend. So there are some puts and pulls throughout it, but I think it's a different risk, and I think it's proportional to the risk that council has on this initiative.
Thank you.
I'll feel it.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Jen. The next item on the agenda is I'm sorry, I didn't check that one out. The next one is the Hilden Sidewalk Highway number 2 and the award of the tender. And Kayla, you're going to address this, please. Our engineer from the Public Works Department, Kayla, please.
Yeah, so I work with David under Director of Public Works, Michelle. Hello to everyone that I have not yet met. So this is the award of a tender that's gone out for the construction of a new piece of sidewalk. This is located in Hilden on Highway 2 from Avalon to Edwards. So this sidewalk was designed in-house. It was tendered earlier in June for about 2 weeks, and we received 5 responses. Although 2 of them did come in under budget, we are asking for a little bit more money, just because once we add in all of the other items, like the pre-survey, all of the staff time, all of the quality assurance testing, that will take us really close to that budget number of 1.8 million. So you'll see there we had the low bid come in from Basin at 1.693. So included in our number, we'd also like to propose a contingency of $100,000. For anyone who's not aware, this can only be used under the authority of the Director of Public Works, and it would only be in the case that the contractor goes to excavate and we find something that we didn't know was there. So it would be exigent circumstances. It wouldn't be within the normal course of the project. So perhaps a bit contentious. Strategic priorities. This sidewalk was placed on Council's 5-year capital plan as part of a active transportation plan that was developed in-house. So it was developed quite a few years ago, and as Council might be aware, there's currently an RFP out to seek a consultant to update that. And a significant component of that project will include public engagement. The staff recognizes that times have changed and we need an updated plan. Certainly the province has also recognized this. They got rid of the Motor Vehicle Act and replaced it with the Transportation Safety Act, which recognizes and classifies vulnerable road users. So certainly we want to make sure that everyone in our communities can move throughout the community safely. That includes people who are too young to drive, people who are disabled and maybe can't drive. It includes everyone, not just those who can afford a motor vehicle. And this is closely tied to housing affordability as well. So just adding that in there. Ultimately, staff recommend that the tender be awarded as presented. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm prepared to entertain a motion on this issue. Council?
Yeah.
Council?
That tender for construction of the Hilden Highway number 2 sidewalk from Avalon to Edwards Road be awarded to Basin Contracting for a total contract amount of 1.693 million, excluding HST. Which a contingency grant of $100,000 be awarded and
Approved.
be approved and only authorized by the Director of Public Works.
Thank you. And seconded by Deputy Mayor Stone. And discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad to see that David Public Works raised where we're at strategic planning. I know I brought this to your attention. You put on there and I said I won't stop it, but when I look at this much money being spent in an area that's outside the urban core, that's got, I think, 11 buildings on the street, so it just doesn't add up. And we're looking at subdivisions without sidewalks, near schools, If we have a lot more pedestrian traffic on than this on the main highway, but you just said, I'm glad to see that we're gonna take a second look at where we're spending money more locally than outside the. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further comments? Then are you ready for the question? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Kayla. The next item, the next item on the agenda is the Bass River Bridge. This has been added by Councillor Fletcher, and I'm asking Councillor Fletcher to address it, please.
Through the chair, I would like to ask for council's consideration for sending a letter to the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works supporting the naming of the new bridge in Bass River. I know it's Public Works bridge, but it's just part of the process in naming the bridge. And I'd like to make a motion that council write a letter to Nova Scotia Public Works on behalf of the citizens of Bass River recommending a name for the new bridge.
Is there any recommended name? Is that? Oh, there are two.
There was a ballot and they have chosen a name.
Oh.
The Chairmaker's Bridge, which I wasn't really supposed to let out, but it's part of it.
Okay. All right, do I have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Weatherby. And any discussion on the motion? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is our action correspondence. And the first piece of correspondence relates to the farmers markets of Nova Scotia. A letter dated May the 7th, 2025, seeking a letter of support for reconsideration of a recent decision regarding provincial funding. The letter is self-explanatory, and what are your wishes, Council?
Motion for letter.
Well, that's up to Council. If you want to put a motion on the floor to that effect, then
Put motion on the floor to send a letter to support their wishes.
you have a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Kennedy. And discussion on the motion? This is for a letter of support for farmers markets. No, okay. The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. We'll prepare a letter to go to the province with regards to farmers markets.
You already did. I think it's right.
There is one,
Template included in it.
There's a template, yeah.
Filling the
It's-
signature.
There's a template there, yeah, well, it still requires writing it, doesn't it? Yeah. And the next item is from Devontra Fry, Interim Managing Director of the Cliffs of Fundy Geopark, a letter dated June 11, 2025, requesting a letter of support with regards, it's a confirmation of future funding through to 2028. And Council, your wishes, please. The letter is self-explanatory. Councillor Cooper.
Council,
Your microphone didn't come on, Councillor.
move that council send a letter committing a principle to sustain its annual funding to the geopark through to 2028.
Thank you, Councillor,
I'll
and
speak on that after.
yes, okay, and seconded by Councillor Martel. And Councillor Cooper, you wanted to address this, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, as it says, their request has been sent to the municipality of Cumberland, and they have committed that they are going to do that.
Yes, they have,
Yeah.
yes, for 3 years, yes. Any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried unanimously. The next letter is a request via email requesting consideration of a monetary donation toward travel expenses for the CEC Envirothon team to international competition. And your wishes, council, I'm prepared to entertain a motion. Councillor Cooper,
Who is it we receive for information?
do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Sanderson. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, we don't do this kind of thing. People come here to do, events, we invite them in. We had this conversation many years ago, many times. If you start giving money for these folks, probably deserve it. There's somebody tomorrow that deserves to go for a science project, music project, or a good runner, or a good skater, whatever. And you just can't, be paying, send people places. What we do here is we make it so people can come here to buy competitions or whatever. So that's why.
Thank you, Councillor, and Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if I totally agree with Councillor Cooper. I think I've sat here long enough that I've seen us put money aside where we have sent people places. Because if that was the case, nobody would come here when we go something. They want to raise some funds to come here. So I look at it and, I'm looking at who's sending it in, and I know a person, she's actually sat down there and asked for other things from us and provided a big thing to Scotia Pool. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I don't see a problem with us making a donation to send these kids somewhere else to, especially where it's environmentally, but I got no problem. It depends on the amount. I'll wait and see where it goes.
Councillor Benoit.
Thank you, Mayor Blair. We have talked about this before, and I've been one of the ones that have said that you do case by case. I realize it's not something that we normally practice, especially when it involves a school. That conversation's been had many times, but I disagree in the sense that I feel like it is case by case, and we keep talking about climate change and environmental and municipalities doing a lot of work there as well with Joanna. And I just think this just lines into what the municipality's doing. And I think it's great on these kids that are doing it. I would have liked to seen a little more information, and I would have put a motion through to send them a donation, but unfortunately I didn't check with our CAO or Scott as to where that money would come out of, but I did reach out to them because there wasn't very much information on there, and I asked about how many people were going. There's 5 grade 12 students on the team, 2 chaperones. There wasn't much in there as far as what they were looking for as far as a budget, so they said that there was a total amount for 7 flights that were over $4,500 with another $600 for baggage. And I asked if the school was offering any funds or if any of the local governments were, and they had said that CEC Student Council had donated some, as well as Dave Ritzy. So I will see where it goes as well, but I would be happy to give them a donation, even a small one. But I think I think it's great that these kids are doing this and they're able to represent, and I would agree with it. Thank you.
Further comments? And we do have a motion on the floor. Councillor Cooper, the question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. And nays? Councillor Benoit and Councillor Johnson. The next item on the motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is Shelley Work, Donor Relations of the Prostate Cancer Foundation Canada. And they, by request of April 3, 2025, request lighting up our building in September for Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. So basically what we need is a motion to light up the building. They ask that it be lit in blue lights. And we have done this, if memory serves, when we had Operation Blue Nose back in 2020, post mass shooting and a number of other events that went on at that time. So Deputy Mayor Sanderson, please.
Mayor, I move that we support Prostate Cancer Awareness Month by lighting our building in blue during the month of September.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Benoit. Any discussion on that motion? And all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is the addendum on table this evening, and it is a request from Katie Price, Chair of our EDI Committee, that is asking for a name change for the EDI Committee. And it is self-explanatory. Instead of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, EDI, the name would be changed to Equity, Diversity, Inclusion and Accessibility, EDIA Committee. And I'm prepared to entertain a motion with regards to that request. Deputy Mayor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we rename the municipality's EDI, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee, to EDIA, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion and Accessibility.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patton. Discussion on the motion? The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Unanimously passed. Motion carried. And the next item is our correspondence information. And that includes our development activity report for the month of May 2025 and our building inspector's report on building permit statistics for May 2025. And one of the things that stood out to me were the number of solar permits that have been issued. I think there were something like 8 of them that were issued in this list. So that's pretty significant. I don't remember seeing that many before on a month's report. I'm prepared to entertain a motion that these 2 reports be accepted for information. Moved by Councillor Leggett, seconded by Councillor Cooper. And any discussion, any questions with regards to the reports? No. All those in favor, please, of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The 2 reports have been received for information. The next item on the agenda is information items, and that includes all the reports from our council members, and you certainly have been busy this last month. There are a lot of events that our councillors have been involved in. I specifically want to thank, with regards to my report, Councillor Weatherby for attending the International Peacekeepers event in Bass River. I very much appreciate your doing that, Councillor.
Pleasure.
And Councillor Sanderson for attending the annual meeting of the Marigold Center. I appreciate that. Difficult to be 2 places at once. So thank you all for your reports, for all the work that you're doing it's been very busy this last month. We have had I've been involved in 3 conferences and the PMC meeting, this monitoring committee meeting, and have also been a keynote speaker in St. Catharines on the mass shooting to an emergency management conference. So it has been a very busy month. But thank you all for everything you're doing in your communities. Very important. The next item is to go in camera, and I'm prepared to entertain a motion that we go in camera. Moved by Deputy Mayor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Weatherby. And we are now in camera and we'll take a 10-minute break.